You know that highly specific, deeply irritating feeling when you were just sitting in traffic on a major highway and everything is completely gridlocked?
Oh, absolutely. The absolute worst feeling.
Right. You are totally boxed in by these massive semi-trucks, and, well, the engine is just idling, the tension is literally baking in the air,
Yeah.
and you're constantly checking your mirrors for movement that, just isn't happening.
Yeah, it is an incredibly claustrophobic sensation, honestly,
Mhm.
because you are entirely at the mercy of whatever's causing that bottleneck miles ahead of you.
Exactly.
You are completely stripped of any agency.
And then suddenly the brake lights ahead of you just disappear. The road finally opens up, you step on the gas, the wind hits your face, and you let out this massive collective exhale.
The best feeling.
It is. But the second you start cruising, you look down at your dashboard and realize your gas tank is sitting below empty. You have exactly 3 minutes to find an exit before your car physically dies right in the fast lane.
Wow. Yeah, that abrupt swing from immense relief to sheer immediate panic. That is a really powerful visual.
Well, welcome to the deep dive, because if you are listening to this right now, that is exactly what it feels like to read through today's stack of sources. We're looking at a batch of updates from the Daily Tech Reader, and this is dated Tuesday, June 16th, 2026.
And it is quite a stack today.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically make sense of a world that is simultaneously uncorking some massive global bottlenecks while starting up some extremely high stakes, terrifyingly short countdown clocks.
We are definitely looking at a day of extreme contrasts here. Synthesizing the core themes from today's sources, we are tracking the immediate, highly volatile fallout of the roughly 15-week U.S.-Iran war.
Right.
And domestically, we are witnessing a massive, totally unprecedented government takedown of top-tier artificial intelligence model.
Yeah, which is just crazy.
It is. And alongside all of that geopolitical and technological friction, society is just indulging in these colossal cultural spectacles while literally hiding from extreme weather.
It is just a massive amount of data for anyone to process. Okay, so let's unpack this. And let's start with the literal unblocking of the global economy.
Sounds good.
So, the facts on the ground right now. Officials are preparing to formally sign the U.S.-Iran peace framework this Friday. I mean, this officially ends the 15-week naval blockade. Commercial vessels are already moving back into position to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is huge.
Huge. Commodity markets are finally stabilizing, and crude oil prices are retreating after just a brutal spike.
The global market is letting out that collective exhale you mentioned earlier.
Dead set.
Because to understand the mechanism here, the Strait of Hormuz, it isn't just a shipping lane. It is a global artery. Roughly 20% of the world's daily oil consumption passes through that narrow waterway.
20%, wow.
Right. So when it was closed for 15 weeks, it sent devastating shockwaves through international shipping. It scrambled supply chains, and it triggered intense inflationary pressures all over the world.
Yeah, we all felt that at the pump.
Exactly. Traders are anticipating Friday's formal reopening, so they are pricing in a return to normalcy. But, and this is the key, the full implementation of these terms waits for that official signature.
And that signature, that triggers the empty gas tank on our dashboard?
Yep.
Because the moment that framework is signed, it kicks off a strict 60-day window for critical nuclear enrichment negotiations. Now, the old analogy I had in my head was, popping a shaken champagne bottle.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right, but that doesn't really work for a nuclear threat, does it? Going flat isn't the danger here at all. It is more like we just dynamited a massive logjam on a river.
Yep.
The water is flowing again. The immediate threat of a flood is gone. But now negotiators have exactly 60 days to build a permanent concrete dam while standing waist deep in rushing water. And if they fail, everything downstream just gets washed out.
That is a far more accurate representation of the stakes, I think. Because what's fascinating here is how the established mechanics of international diplomacy usually work, right?
Yeah.
Versus what is being attempted today.
Right.
Typically, capping a nation's nuclear enrichment capabilities takes years. I mean, it requires endless rounds of technical working groups.
Oh, yeah.
You have on-the-ground facility inspections and these incredibly slow, incremental trust-building exercises, trying to condense that entire life cycle into 60 days. That is a diplomatic sprint that has proliferation experts deeply, deeply alarmed.
Especially when you look at the starting line here. I mean, the initial ceasefire halted the active naval hostilities, sure, but it secured zero immediate structural concessions from Tehran regarding its weapons capabilities. Right. They essentially just hit pause on the military conflict, and now they have 2 months to establish complex, long-term enrichment limits from an absolute dead standstill.
Which brings us to the logistical hurdle of how you actually verify those limits. You cannot successfully negotiate a high-stakes nuclear treaty if you are blind to the other side's movements and communications.
Of course not.
And yet, due to a lapse in surveillance authority, the United States is heading into this 60-day sprint severely handicapped.
Okay, so if you're listening and wondering how a domestic legal lapse causes international blindness, we need to talk about FISA Section 702.
Yes, we do.
Because intelligence officials are raising massive alarms because this critical surveillance authority has completely lapsed. Congress went on recess without voting on a renewal package. Now, my layman's understanding of FISA is that it is, some sort of wiretapping program. But how exactly does losing it cripple a nuclear negotiation?
Well, it is much broader than just standard wiretapping. Section 702 allows the U.S. government to intercept the communications of non-U.S. citizens located abroad utilizing U.S. digital infrastructure.
Like what?
Like servers managed by major American tech companies. It is an absolute cornerstone for tracking foreign intent, mapping out negotiation strategies behind closed doors, and verifying whether a foreign adversary is actually honoring a ceasefire.
Oh, wow.
To quantify its importance, intelligence officials have stressed that data gathered under Section 702 previously accounted for over 60% of the president's daily intelligence briefing.
Wait, I really need to pause on that math because the causality here is almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
We are entering the most sensitive 60 days of international diplomacy, attempting to permanently cap a nuclear weapons program. And the specific surveillance tool that generates 60% of the commander-in-chief's daily threat matrix is legally unplugged just because Congress decided to go on vacation.
I mean, that is the reality. Domestic political gridlock has directly severed a vital artery of foreign intelligence gathering. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the U.S. isn't just dealing with a lack of internal data. There is also immense friction with key allies.
Right. Israel is fundamentally complicating the map here.
Very much so. The sources outline that Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, he has drawn an incredibly firm line. Israel maintains it will not withdraw from occupied security buffer zones in Lebanon, Syria, or Gaza.
Right.
Furthermore, they are explicitly maintaining their right to act independently against Iranian targets. So, while the U.S. and Iran are trying to formalize this bilateral peace framework, America's closest regional ally is maintaining a completely independent, active security posture.
It is a nightmare scenario for any negotiator. You are basically trying to diffuse a geopolitical crisis while wearing a blindfold, and your allies are actively changing the parameters of the conflict zone around you. And to make it even more tangled, President Trump is currently at the 52nd G7 summit in France, right? And the European Union is layering on its own strict demands.
Yes, Ursula von der Leyen.
Right. She stated that any future sanctions relief for Iran must be strictly tied to credible, verifiable behavioral changes.
And the paradox there is just striking.
Yeah.
The EU is demanding verifiable changes at the exact moment the United States has allowed its primary verification tool to go offline.
It is wild. And just a quick note for you listening, right? As we walk through these intense domestic and international maneuvers, we are just looking impartially at the mechanics of the situation as presented in the source material.
Right, exactly.
We are mapping out the incredible complexity of this moment, not taking a stance on the politics behind any of it.
Analyzing the causality is what matters here. How one lapsed policy or one regional skirmish cascades into a global diplomatic bottleneck. And, speaking of cascading effects, there is a fascinating pivot happening domestically regarding another kind of bottleneck.
Oh, yeah. Here's where it gets really interesting. While the government is celebrating the end of a physical naval blockade in the Middle East, they have just initiated a massive digital blockade right here at home.
Right in our backyard.
Anthropic, which is, one of the premier artificial intelligence companies on the planet. They have had their flagship models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, blacked out globally for a 6th consecutive day.
And this is a direct result of an ongoing export control dispute with the U.S. Department of Commerce. And it has escalated far, far beyond standard regulatory friction.
I mean, senior technical staff from Anthropic are literally being called into meetings with the CIA and the White House science advisor, Michael Kratsius.
Yeah.
White House advisor David Sachs has publicly claimed the administration asked Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei to patch or voluntarily pull the models because they pose severe jailbreak risks and that they could be diverted to foreign military intelligence. Let's actually define that term. When they say jailbreak, they don't mean a hacker physically breaking into a server room, do they?
No, no. Jailbreaking an AI model refers to highly specific prompt engineering.
Okay.
Advanced AI systems have safety guardrails built into their training. This is to prevent them from generating malicious code, synthesizing biological weapons, or outputting classified-style military strategies.
Right, the scary stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jailbreaking is the act of feeding the AI carefully constructed, very convoluted prompts that trick the system into bypassing its own safety guardrails and releasing that restricted information.
Wow.
The White House is arguing that Fable 5's vulnerabilities in this area are an active national security threat.
But Amodei is forcefully pushing back on that narrative. I mean, he is arguing that these vulnerabilities are essentially industry standard at this current stage of AI development. And more importantly, that these specific systems had already navigated the required channels and received prior deployment approval.
That's his main point, yeah.
So if we look for an analogy here, it feels like the government suddenly deciding to ground our entire domestic Starfleet because they are terrified someone might steal the flight manual. Meanwhile, foreign competitors are just flying their own ships right past us.
That tension is exactly what a coalition of prominent cybersecurity leaders is highlighting right now. They have formally written to the Trump administration urging an immediate reversal of these export controls.
Interesting.
Because what they are arguing fundamentally flips how the public usually views artificial intelligence.
Right.
We have a tendency to view AI purely as an offensive capability.
Right.
Like a tool that bad actors can weaponize to write malware or generate massive disinformation campaigns.
That's definitely the popular fear.
But these cybersecurity experts are arguing that AI has actually become an indispensable defensive necessity.
I want to dig into the how of that.
Yeah.
How does pulling a commercial model like Fable 5 offline actively hurt our own national defense?
Well, think about the sheer scale of modern digital infrastructure. There are billions and billions of lines of code governing everything from power grids to financial networks.
Yeah.
Human analysts cannot possibly monitor all of it for zero-day exploits or subtle anomalies. It's just too much. Advanced AI models, however, can analyze massive data sets of code at machine speed. They detect and patch vulnerabilities before an adversary can even exploit them.
Oh, I see.
So sidelining domestic models like Fable 5 strips our own cyber defenders of their most efficient analytical tools. And on top of that, foreign competitors are operating comparable models without these sweeping restrictions.
So in this frantic attempt to lock the technology down so nobody can misuse it, we are actually blinding our own cyber defenders and essentially handing market dominance to foreign competitors on a silver platter.
It is the ultimate dilemma of technological containment. By over-indexing on preventing risk, you can inadvertently destroy your own strategic edge. But the implications of this global blackout don't stop at national security.
Not even close. Because if you look at the timeline in our sources, this narrative shifts rapidly from national security into raw, backroom, billion-dollar politics. And if you're an investor listening to this, the sequence of events is just wild.
It really is.
The sources detail a highly scrutinized private phone call between Amazon CEO Andy Jassy and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Now, Amazon is Anthropic's largest outside investor, and this phone call happened mere hours before the Commerce Department issued the Global Export Control Directive, pulling Anthropic's models offline.
And we really should explore why the Treasury Secretary was involved at all, rather than just the Commerce Department, which issues the actual bans.
Good point.
The Treasury oversees the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFI-US, and manages broader systemic financial risks. When a government action is about to unilaterally halt the primary product of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, the Treasury has to evaluate the blast radius that will hit the broader financial markets.
Which brings us to the concept of material risk disclosures. Financial analysts are warning that this ongoing 6-day blackout, combined with the fact that Anthropic was previously placed on a Pentagon national security blacklist, is forcing the company to make massive material risk disclosures that threaten its pre-IPO valuation. So, a material risk disclosure, is that basically a legal check engine light for potential IPO investors?
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. When a tech giant is preparing for an initial public offering, they are legally obligated by the SEC to disclose any known variables that could materially damage their future business operations.
Makes sense.
Investors price the company based on its projected revenue. But if a single unilateral government directive can shut down your primary revenue-generating software overnight, the math completely breaks down.
It sets a terrifying precedent for the entire tech sector. I mean, the government hasn't just paused a piece of software here. They have demonstrated they can instantly label any tech company's core product a weapon of mass destruction, pull it offline globally, and potentially erase billions of dollars in valuation with zero runway.
Exactly. And this raises a critical question for anyone involved in venture capital or corporate strategy. How do you confidently build a business model or accurately value an emerging technology company when the regulatory environment can pivot from highly permissive to globally prohibitive in a matter of hours?
You really can't.
It creates a profound chilling effect on the entire AI industry's ability to raise capital.
So what does this all mean? We have ticking nuclear countdown clocks, a U.S. intelligence apparatus running blind while allies go rogue, and a billion-dollar AI standoff that is freezing the tech market.
It's a lot.
It is the kind of unrelenting, high-stakes global stress that makes you just want to turn your phone off, shut the blinds, and completely tune out. Which brings us to how humanity is actually coping with this specific Tuesday in 2026.
The human element is perhaps the most fascinating part of this data stack, I think.
Because while the geopolitical and digital worlds are incredibly tense, society is aggressively seeking distraction through some of the most unprecedented cultural spectacles we have ever seen.
Unprecedented is the right word.
The sheer scale of the distraction dominating the news cycle is surreal. First, you have the expanded 48-team FIFA World Cup group stage sweeping across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Millions of people are utterly captivated by it. Then you have the New York Knicks.
Oh, a historic moment for that franchise.
Exactly. 53 years in the making. I mean, their last championship title was in 1973, and they just broke that drought, fueled by guard Jalen Brunson, dropping a dominant 45-point performance in Game 5 against the Spurs.
Incredible game.
Manhattan is entirely consumed with preparing for a massive, historic ticker tape parade.
And these are unifying, monumental cultural events that command immense public attention.
They really are. But then you look at Sunday evening, and things shift from historic to just purely surreal. We saw the UFC Freedom 250 broadcast. It drew a massive record-breaking audience across CBS and Paramount+. But they didn't hold this event in a Vegas arena or a stadium.
No, they did not.
It was held on the South Lawn of the White House.
The broadcast was staged there to mark President Trump's 80th birthday, which actually coincided with Flag Day.
It is just staggering to visualize. The card was originally intended for the U.S. semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the country. But instead, we are looking at a commercial cage-fighting event staged on the manicured lawn of the executive branch of the United States government. And the final piece of this puzzle. While the World Cup, the Knicks parade, and the White House UFC fights are dominating screens everywhere, there is a dangerous, relentless, high-pressure heat dome physically trapping the South and the Southwest United States.
Right.
The National Weather Service is urging people to stay indoors because heat indices have reached genuinely hazardous levels.
The physical reality of the environment is literally forcing people inside, where they are then consuming these massive spectacles.
Mhm.
And if we analyze the psychology behind this, it is a deeply human response.
So,
Massive sports properties, like an expanded World Cup, an emotional NBA championship, or a heavily promoted combat sports event, they act as essential societal pressure valves.
because sports offer something the real world currently lacks, right? Absolute certainty.
Yes.
Unlike a murky 60-day nuclear negotiation where the intelligence is dark, or a highly technical AI export ban that crashes a tech valuation, a basketball game is simple. The clock runs out, somebody wins, and somebody loses.
Precisely. When the geopolitical heat is rising in the Middle East, when economic anxieties are chilling the tech markets, and when literal environmental heat is physically endangering populations, humanity instinctively turns to what the Romans called bread and circuses.
Right.
We crave clear, binary narratives to provide temporary psychological escape from overwhelming systemic complexity.
The pressure valve is fully open right now, so let's recap the journey we just took through today's sources, because we covered a massive amount of ground.
We certainly did.
We started with the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz, which provides immediate economic relief, but starts a terrifying 60-day countdown clock for nuclear negotiations with Iran. We explored how those negotiations are severely hampered because FISA Section 702 has lapsed, basically blinding U.S. intelligence while allies like Israel maintain independent military postures. We then pivoted to the domestic digital blockade, where the Commerce Department unilaterally pulled Anthropic's flagship AI models offline, crippling our own cyber defenses and freezing the tech IPO market. And finally, we looked at how society is managing all this extreme stress by turning on the World Cup, celebrating the Knicks, and watching UFC fights on the White House lawn while hiding from a hazardous heat dome.
It is a profound, almost cinematic snapshot of where we are right now. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that connects all these disparate events.
Okay, let's hear it.
Throughout this deep dive, we have watched a profound blurring of societal lines. Consider this. If a commercial artificial intelligence model can be unilaterally restricted by the federal government essentially as a weapon of mass destruction, while simultaneously, a commercial sports property like the UFC is hosted as state-sponsored entertainment on the lawn of the White House. Are we witnessing a permanent redefinition of the boundaries between state power, private enterprise, and public entertainment? The domains that used to be strictly separated, like national security, corporate technology, and cultural spectacle, they seem to have entirely collapsed into one another.
Wow. That is exactly the kind of question that forces you to rethink how you read the news.
Really?
I mean, are the old guardrails completely gone, or are we just building a completely new road as we drive on it? It brings us right back to that car stuck in traffic we talked about at the beginning.
It really does.
We finally have an open road, the bottleneck is cleared, we are moving incredibly fast. But we are driving a totally different vehicle now, the gas tank is empty, and we're not entirely sure who is actually steering.
What a time to be alive.
Truly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep questioning those headlines, and we will catch you next time.